again. So I'm super excited, super excited today. So the Automotive Inclusion Council is happy to bring this fireside chat, a conversation with Dr. Lauren Starr, who I am super excited to introduce you all to. If you don't know about the Automotive Inclusion Council, definitely check in with me, right? Because this council is a group, we're kind of like a coalition. There's a bunch of organizations, there's about 13 of us right now. And what we have recognized is symptoms. And we're tired of talking. I'm so tired of talking about the same symptoms over and over. I mean, we come up with solutions for turnover, for the gender gap, and our ability to, or inability to, attract emerging talent, right? And we should keep talking about these things. What I would like to see is that we recognize that these are symptoms of a collective inability of the industry as a whole to embrace inclusion and what that means. Because I think that is the real wound, right? And I get tired of talking about these things over and over. So I got a bunch of people together, a bunch of organizations together, and we're trying to make some real change. I've been in automotive since 1998. Same conversations, you know. So when I found your book, which is called Evidence-Based Inclusion. Now you have 3 other books, so I'm gonna let me introduce
There we
Dr.
go.
Starr here, everybody. So it is my absolute pleasure to be on a call with her. Actually, part of the reason we were a little bit late is because we were yapping. We're talking in between. We're like, we should be talking about this on the live, right? So Dr. Starr, you all, is you're the first, right? PhD
First and
psychologist.
only.
First and
Yeah.
only in the United States. She is an inclusion, diversity, and equity PhD, right? So the only. So and she's about the data, right? Evidence-based inclusion and how to do that. And that's the thing that really gets me. She's been working, she's a HR executive. She's just totally my people. For 20 years. She
I did send you the Zoom link, didn't I?
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't turn off. Did you hear? I don't know if everybody can hear that. Oh. Anyway, if you hear me talking, let's hope that that doesn't happen somewhere. So anyway, Dr. Starr has she's got an amazing background, right? She's a vet. She's been on Broadway. Like, she's just a lot of fun, right? Broadway and off Broadway. Like, that's a whole other conversation that I want to have with her.
It really is.
But most of all, right, like what we're here to talk about is her book, right? Evidence-based inclusion. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. First, well, Dr. Starr, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for having me. This is going to be so much fun because I think you're spot on, right? The landscape for diversity, equity, and inclusion, or as I like to refer to it because it makes more sense, is inclusion plus accessibility equals diversity over equity. Yeah, think about
say that again.
Right?
Say that again.
Yay! So,
all right, let's hope this works. This is my second time doing
This is
this.
me. Wait a minute.
Nice. Look at you. You go, you. What's going on here?
I had to, you know what?
All right. Hopefully we're still live because I had the one that didn't work decided to work.
Decided to work?
Yes. So, but we're on.
I love it. You can see it. I love it. So inclusion plus accessibility. So if your organization has the foundation in inclusion and accessibility for your employees and your customers, it will drive or equals your diversity over equity. Meaning that, yes, we still need to be conscious about diversity in the workplace, but really the real work is in that inclusion and accessibility. It's creating that workplace environment where everyone feels valued, where everyone's opinion is heard, where everyone has a seat at the table, and everyone has what they need, right, from an accessibility lens to be able to do their job. When you have that in place, you will drive diversity. You will notice an uptick, and this isn't just me saying this. This is what the data shows, my friends, that when you have those two in place, you will attract high producing, diverse candidates.
So let's talk about, I
that.
love that you're using the word accessibility, right?
I
Making
love
things
accessibility.
accessible. So the first thing that makes me think about is, well, you know, lately it seems like when people hear the word diversity, the only thing that is thought about is gender and race,
Gender
right?
and race. And there's so much.
So much.
Yeah, there's so much more, right? Organizations, and I get this. I'll have an organization calling, we want to become more diverse. And I say to them, you already are diverse. Every individual in your organization is different from the other, the person sitting next to them.
Exactly. I
It's
mean, I
not
think
just race and gender. In fact, even gender starting to fall off a little bit.
not in automotive, but
Because, right, you're right, yeah. Because diversity has become so polarizing politically, now diversity means race. Wrong.
right.
Diversity does not mean race or ethnicity. In fact, the AMA has come out in 2022, the American Medical Association, and it's like, hey, guess what? Race and ethnicity are not biological. They're social
Right.
constructs.
Right.
So
Well, yes, they are social constructs.
they're social constructs.
I mean, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of talking about history and how those,
No.
not going to do that. But what I do think is really, really important when we're talking about accessibility, right? Like there's this really cool meme that really kind of explained to me equity and making things accessible. Not, you know, there's a that picture of a ball game or something that's
Oh, I
going on.
knew you were going to go there. And I call
I mean,
this
I
out.
love that one. It just makes so much sense, right? And so there's a ball game, and the first picture, I think there's a fence in front of it, and there's a kid in a wheelchair and a shorter kid and an adult person. The adult person can see the game. The next picture is the kids on a ladder or something like that, and they can see. And then there's a box that the person that's on the wheelchair is on top of the box and can see the game. So maybe that's equality, right? Like everybody can see the game. The next picture, there's no fence, right? It's, to me, that's removing barriers. Dr. Star is frozen. Let's see if she comes back for a second. Oh, there. Oh, I can hear you. So, but your video is frozen, but we'll see what happens. So, oh, you're back. To me, that explains that equity, and kind of like you're talking about, is about removing barriers for people, right? So anyway, I just love that. So we've talked a little bit about inclusion. I definitely and you've heard me talk about this theory that I have, that about the symptoms of a lack of inclusion and what those are in automotive. So I think what do you think about this theory? Do you think I'm right or could be right about this? I'm curious for your opinion. Uh-oh. Oh, you're on mute. I don't know what happened, Dr. Starr.
Did y'all catch that? Because there'll be a test after today.
Where see, this
right?
is
Plug in, my friends.
Do you think I'm right with my theory of the symptoms and the real wound is inclusion?
Absolutely. I think I don't think inclusion is the wound. I think the solution to the symptoms, right? I think the wound is organizational culture. And I think the solution is inclusion. And the wound are all that we're seeing. What's really interesting, though, right? I loved your equity and going through that slide. In my book, I go through that slide, and I'm like, I love that you love it, because I think it is one of the. It's a pictorial that makes me just crack up laughing, because that is not equity.
Right. It's not.
The
Well,
child, yeah, the child in the wheelchair. Well, first off, buy the damn tickets, okay? And
right.
you'll be sitting in the ball game.
Yeah.
So, right. So I'm like this, like, but I get their thought here, right? We want to be able to give employees that box to step up so they can see over. But the child in the wheelchair, that's accessibility. That is not equity.
Mhm. Right.
Accessibility is guaranteed to anyone that has a disability.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
Equity is not a guarantee.
It's not a guarantee, but when we're
Equity is
talking
not a
about
guarantee. Absolutely not.
when, I mean, but isn't it part of the goal, equity? And for me, like that meme helps me understand that when I'm talking about equity, it's more about discovering what the barriers are. Like, let's take women in automotive, for example,
Okay.
right? Discovering, first, you got to find out what the barriers are. Why forever have we been somewhere between 18 and 23% of the entire automotive industry is made up of women? And
Okay.
we stayed there and been there. So remove, to me, that means discovering what those barriers are and taking steps to remove those barriers to make just the workplace more accessible, right? And looking at it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
There's for me, there is a, oh, well, everybody has, everybody has the same, we're all equal. Everybody has, the playing field is level, is, I believe, a popular belief. But there are certain things that prevent different groups
Yeah. The playing
from
field is
from
not
really
flipping
being
level.
on that playing field, right?
Yeah, the
So,
playing field is
and-
not flipping level, right? That's
right,
equity, right? The playing field is level. You're getting what you need so that you can succeed. That is really all about that equity, not equality, because the two of them are very, very different. And we will never have equal equality across the United States as long as we have socioeconomic issues.
yeah.
That
So,
just is what it is. And guess what? We'll never have equity in the workplace until we have equity socially.
hmm,
Now, we
oh
can in
my
the
God.
workplace have equity and hope it trickles out, but until society embraces equity, right? Like, number one issue in the workplace right now, skills gap.
Mhm.
Huge
Right.
equity issue, skills gap.
Mhm.
We have, right? It is so funny because I just read a job posting, and in the job posting, I'll pull it, I've got it somewhere on my desk. I do. In the job posting, this is what they put, and it cracked me up. It says studies have shown that women and people of color are less likely to apply for jobs unless they believe they can perform every single job description task. And that's true.
I believe is true, right?
That's true.
We say this all the time. I hate job descriptions that have
Right?
the
But
test. I'm
again,
like,
that's
who are you
skills
looking
equity.
for? Give
That
me,
is,
tell me the kind of person you're looking for. If there's anyway,
yeah.
what I want to know, Dr. Starr, is when you go into an organization, how do you diagnose the inclusion level for them?
Oh, yeah, right. Let's talk metrics because I get all gooey about
Yeah,
that.
that's what I want to know.
Right.
Like,
Like, so here's the thing. If you're going, I'm not sure we have an inclusive, right? I'm not sure we have an organization culture that's inclusive. I'm not sure if inclusion is present. I want to know if we have a problem. First and foremost, you look at your retention data. Who's leaving the organization?
mhm.
If you shake and you utilize your organizational demographics, if you're showing that there's one population from a demographic lens, be that veterans, disabilities, be that race and ethnicity, be it sexual identity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, is there a group that's leaving more than the other groups? And yes, because you may not be as right, we may not have a white and black 50-50 mix. You have to do a little bit of math here, right? You have to do a little math to show what is the incidence for turnover? What is the
Okay.
incidence for promotions? Who are we promoting?
Emotions.
Clear identification of skills gap. when we look at promotionary data. Look at employee engagement. Look at your employee engagement survey. First, when I say
look at employee engagement,
what if they don't do one? Well, then you're not doing best practices. So let's take a step back, and you have a bigger problem than inclusion. I'm sorry, but you do.
I love
right?
it.
Like if you're not doing an engagement survey to measure the organizational culture and engagement of your employees, then I can't fix you.
So there's step 0.
They're at step 0. Like that's where I go back and I go, okay, now we need, right? There's a very different lens that we need to apply here.
And do you back up with them and say, okay, look, before we can do any of this,
before we can do any of this,
you can do, I mean, one of my recommendations is always first, just look at the numbers, look at the area that you operate in and the demographics that we can from that and see how that matches up. But when there's no engagement data, you say, let's take a step back. And
because without right. So when you do a true vetted employee engagement survey, you're looking at the decision-making process. You're looking at leadership. You're looking at organizational culture. You're looking at DE&I if you put it into your survey. And I have great questions for that. And if you want them, you'll have to shoot me an email and I'll give them to you.
And some of them are in the back of the book.
And some of them are in the back of the book. Exactly.
Okay, so there's the index, or there's appendices, I believe.
Yeah, there's a ton of information in there.
There's a whole bunch of stuff, but
right. So the issue it may be a leadership issue. It might not be an organizational culture issue. And we shouldn't be quick to jump to that. That's why the employee engagement survey is so important, because that's going to tell me how your employees feel on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
And we can align that.
You do that.
Yeah.
You then look at turnover and you look at promotion rates. Who's getting promoted?
I look at turnover, retention. I look at promotion rates or bench strength, as I like to call it. I like to see the overall HR dashboard. I will help you create that dashboard if need be, so that you can start tracking, right? One of the issues that we see is that we're just not looking at numbers when it comes to an inclusive culture. There's a way to build that. Right. I take a look at any feedback that the organization has received on Glassdoor or any of those other sites out there. I want to see what does your exit strategy look like? What does the exit survey look like? Do you have an exit survey in place? And if you don't, that's okay. We can build that, right? These are little things that will drive in the inclusion, diversity, accessibility, right? In the inclusion, accessibility, diversity, equity space, data drives initiatives. It's not the other way around. If you're going initiatives drive data, you're wrong. Data drives the initiatives, and then data reinforces whether or not that initiative is working.
You know, this is so great, because the next thing I want to talk to you about is I believe this too, right? And I've done over the last 4 to 5 years or so, I constantly study. I'm constantly reading. I'm always trying to learn more. I don't ever think anyway, I don't think I'll stop learning. At least I hope I don't. But everything that I read says trying to do initiatives without inclusion is a losing battle. Basically, it's diversity without inclusion, it just isn't going to work. So in fact, in your book, you say it's a whole chapter. It is a whole chapter. And the chapter is called Inclusion is More Than a Trend. It is a must. Right. So I'd like you to, can you talk about that chapter a little bit?
Sure.
I think that's so, I think it's really important that
that's it. And I think, to your listeners that are listening to this, I'm going to apologize, not for myself, but for other practitioners that fell into the spin cycle, per se, like, oh, we got to do diversity, we got to do belonging, we've got to do, stop the insanity. My tagline would have been stop the insanity, but it was already taken. That inclusion, without inclusion, if you're trying to push diversity, you will create a revolving door. And
Right.
it'll cost your organization a ton of money. You'll be hiring diverse candidates, but they won't stay. They'll take the knowledge you give them in training and orientation, and then they'll go elsewhere, because we know people want to bring their whole self to work. They want to feel valued. They want to have input. This, right? Our book of business today, the way we do business is transformational. Now, look, right? Automotives, where I'm going to go real specific here. Automotives, my friend, back in the 90s and right, even the early 2000s, we were still somewhat transactional, right? That's where the shift happened, because in the 80s, we were 100% transactional. We weren't globalizing then, or to the extent that we are now. But in the 90s, still transactional. So what did that mean? I bought a vehicle based on sticker price, based on, right, I need these 4 things, and right, I want all-wheel drive. I'm just thinking of what I need. I need all-wheel drive. I have to have a great sound system. It has to have a navigator, has to have leather seats, right? Like, I'm listing, like, what do I want? I want a vehicle that I can drive like a freaking tank and not worry about it. That's right. That's one of my needs. And here's my price point. And let's say my price point is $35,000. Okay, what cars meet that? This is the 90s. What cars meet that, right? And you can find out what car meets that. In the 90s, there were cars. There were cars.
Oh, in the
that met that.
90s. Okay, in the
In the
90s,
90s. We're
you
going
can
back in
find
the
your
90s here, right? That's transactional. That's
Right.
transactional. In other words, I don't care where I get a car. I just want a car that meets my needs. Today, we're much more transformational. We are. If you're
Relation.
operating your dealership based on transactions, your dealership's going to go belly up. You have to be transformational. Today, I buy Subarus. I've had now 4. I buy from the same guy, right? I buy from, in fact, my dealership just got bought by a larger dealership, and I was so
Hope you
upset
all
about
listen.
that.
I did not
I
coach
was,
her on this. This is exactly like she's coming at this. We didn't really talk about what we were
we
going to
didn't
talk.
talk, oh my God, like when the Ascent launched, I got the first one off the freaking boat. Like, I was like, I want a red Ascent. I want this,
But
and they
it's
were
your
like, here you go.
salesperson. It's your
And
salesperson.
And my salesperson, so my salesperson called me, Gary, his name is Gary. He's like, hey, Loran, have you seen the new Ascents? I'm like, yeah, I actually just got a flyer in the mail from Subaru, right? Had 3 at that point. This was my fourth Subaru. And I was like, yeah, I just got it. And he goes, you would look good in a red one. I'm like, right? I'm like,
And you just happen to have one, and you would
I'm
look
like,
good at it.
and I'm currently driving a Subaru. He's like, we could trade in. At that time, I was driving a Forester. He's like, we could trade that in and put you in this. And here's the price point. But here's what's important, Loran. Let's talk about the safety, because you've got 3 kids that are going to start driving. What? It's better if they learn on a bigger vehicle than a smaller vehicle. Like, you can always drive a smaller vehicle, but a bigger vehicle, he's like, here's the vehicle, Loran, that your kids can drive and ding up, and you're not going to lose sleep on it.
And you
Like,
ran
they're
to the
going to,
dealership. I mean, he knew about your kids.
he knows my entire family, right? That's transformational. I will always buy a Subaru. Like, now I'm at the point, now my car is 5 years old.
Or, I mean,
I've
what if
got,
he goes to Toyota?
or I could have gone and gotten a RAV4. I could have gotten it.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, like with my buying experience, right? Like my next car will probably be a Hyundai because that's where my salesperson has gone.
And that's where, well,
Right.
that's just it. As long as Gary
Like,
stays.
I'm calling Halim, right? Like all my people are now at a different group.
But
You know,
one of
but
the
it is
things that
about
I love,
people.
yeah, but one of the things I love about this transformational business model is, where do I get my Subaru serviced? At
That's
Subaru.
super.
At that Subaru. My mechanic. So even if Gary leaves, I've got to, right? Gary can leave. I'm still going to stay true to the brand of Subaru because my kids were raised on Subarus. Now I have 3 kids. All 3 kids own Subarus now.
Subaru
I learned on.
itself, I think, does have a reputation for customer loyalty to the brand,
Yes,
to the
yes. But
brand
it's
itself.
not just, right, it's not just like back in the 90s. They've stuck with Gary because I like Gary. Maybe Gary took me out. We had beers one night or wine one night. Gary's my buddy. Gary goes to
Mhm.
another dealership, I'd go with Gary. Oh, transformational. If Gary goes to another dealership, does that mean I have to leave my service team? And they are my service team. I can call them up and say, my car's doing this. And they're like, just bring it in. We'll take a quick look. Like that, right?
That's important.
That's loyalty, but it's more than brand loyalty.
My sister came on, she said she loves Hyundai. Although but anyway.
And that's
Um,
fine. That it can be whatever you want. I'm in the
well, people
Northeast.
love
I
their
need you
brand,
in
but
snow. But yeah,
I think what I am seeing about this, right, is that in our workplaces, right, in the dealership, our relationships with our employees need to move from transactional to transformational,
oh,
right? Something that,
absolutely.
right. And something that your salesperson knew about your family needs, right? Knew what was happening. I think as leaders, if we ask ourselves, how much do we really know
Yeah.
about our employees? What's happening? I mean, just as an HR professional, I have discovered that, what was the rest of the story? There was some show, some guy used to do this show called The Rest of the Story,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, I
Andy
remember that.
Rooney, I think, right? And my father used to love this show, and I really liked it too,
Yeah.
because there is always the rest of the story. So I think unknowingly, as I think about my history, right? Like and I'm a people person, right? And
Mhm.
I always made it a practice to not be HR that's sitting in the office, right? 250 employees, I pretty much knew everybody and knew what was
Yeah.
happening. What I discovered about that is that I don't know if I would, it was relational, right? Like I had relationships with people. I knew what was happening in their lives that affected
Mhm.
decisions about them sometimes, right? About their performance sometimes.
Yeah.
Like if so anyway, but so I think in this conversation, right, when we're talking about how do we figure out um in our workplaces how to
Mhm.
bring more inclusion in,
Inclusion,
is that
inclusion.
kind of like a first step? Actually, you have a thing, it's trademarked, right? Like I love this inclusion immersion. You have a paradigm, the inclusion paradigm.
The inclusion paradigm, absolutely.
So can you break that down for anybody who's
Yeah.
watching? What is the inclusion paradigm? This is also in the book, you all. Like it's
This is
in the
all
book.
in the book. This is all in the book. But we talk about inclusion. And then the next question that I run into is, how do I build an inclusive organizational culture? And believe it or not, it's not a mystery. There's not a secret here. There is an actual strategy, right? This is where my business background comes in, where
Get
you
notes, y'all.
build,
Ready? Get notes. Get your pen, get your
yeah,
paper.
get them out, right? You build an inclusive strategy that diversity and equity fill in on. You look at where you currently are in the inclusion maturity model, which is in the book. And then you start building a strategy that pulls a bunch of different levers like retention, like customer satisfaction. Maybe it's product and design that you add into there as a lever from a diversity lens. Like
Mhm.
there are ways to then take it to the next level. You've got to have and there are associations, right? There are associations out there, employee relation groups, or employee resource groups, excuse me, ERGs.
Mhm.
You may be a dealership that only has 50 people. You're not really big enough for an ERG. However, I bet if you're hooked into this network, this Automotive Inclusion Council, Sandy, you should be setting up some ERGs for their employees.
Hmm.
where
hear
now we're cross-pollinating and sharing ideas and having conversations, right? Because I use my ERGs really as a means to understand the market space and boundaries and barriers.
Mhm.
What are the right?
Understand the marketplace and boundaries and
Yeah,
barriers.
boundaries and
This is
barriers. What are
what you
our
use ERGs for.
employees
So
facing?
what about an industry
Mhm.
RG, an
That's
IRG,
it. You
right?
create an industry resource group. So instead of just single, and I do this with associations.
Mhm.
I have a couple associations actually that I've worked with that we've set up industry wide because they've got small practices or
Right.
small businesses. So I'm like, let's have an industry wide. Why wouldn't we? ERG,
I
where
think
we
that's
can,
interesting.
as an
Probably something I'm going to
industry,
talk to you about.
yeah,
Yeah.
we as an industry, we can approach and solve for issues. As an industry, you can shake out whether or not if women are at 20, what did you say, 23% within the industry?
Tops 23.
Tops 23. That might be out freaking standing based on your talent pool. Right? You may have hit your marker. Remember, just because you're a woman doesn't mean you have to work in automotive to check a box.
I
Get
think
rid
a
of
lot
this
of women
quota,
say,
right? Get rid of this quota attainment in your mind saying we need to be more diverse. You already are diverse. Now, if you're looking to bring in representation to build your client base, it's a very different story
hmm.
than I want diversity.
Yeah. Okay. So I like
Like,
how you put that
it's
because we were
very
ready to
different.
have
Like,
one of those.
yeah, like if you're,
Oh, here's the thing with Dr. Starr and I, right? Like she is my people, but we don't agree on everything,
no,
right?
we don't, and
So
we shouldn't.
we're gonna have some amazing conversations, I'm sure, moving
Yeah,
into the future, right? But when we're talking about women in automotive, for to me, it's also about our customer base, right? Like
yeah,
automotive is an industry, retail is an industry built by men for men, right? You still hear all the same stories. Woman goes into a car dealership and somebody saunters over and says, "Where's your husband?" Right? Or something like we
hmm,
still hear all of these stories. And sometimes we go,
absolutely.
what? This is still happening today? Yes, it does still happen today.
Hmm.
Um, but so when you say maybe we shouldn't have 50% women in automotive, I think,
Maybe you should, maybe it's specific to a job title, right? So if you're saying, Lorraine, right, representation, we want more women selling. We want more women in the retail space. Okay, what does that retail space look like? Because remember, automotive isn't just retail, it's also service center,
well,
right?
right. Yeah,
Right.
there's a
It's also
lot of,
leadership. It's also
well, I'll
so
tell you what I tell my dealers if they're at all interested in DEI. I'm like, look, I already told you where I say start, right? And when you're
mhm,
looking at your staffing, if all of your women are in accounting and all of
mhm,
your traditional minority groups are in detail, it doesn't count,
it
right? Like
doesn't, yeah,
what we want to see, right, is representation throughout at leadership levels too. Because one of the things that I've learned is that it is very true. You got to see it before you even think that you can be it,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
People don't apply. I mean, so
But why aren't they applying?
well,
Right.
that's
So
a whole.
again, right, it's that step back. And here's how you figure out whether or not you need representation on your sales floor. Right. Let's just, I'm going to go right for it. Forget all the other departments, sales floor. Do I need representation? Who's your customer? What does your
Exactly. What
customer
people
base
gonna
look
want.
like? Because I know you're collecting some of those demographic information. What's their ethnicity? What's their gender?
This is some of the stuff when we're just talking about women. This is some of the things that we talk about.
Yeah.
We know that women, if they're not doing the buying, they're driving the buying decision, right? Like
Women
all of this
hold the
data is
purse.
out there.
Women
This,
hold the purse strings in the United States. If you don't have women on your sales floor, I'm
I
making
mean,
the I'm making the decision. We have 6 vehicles in this household, and I made the decision on all of them.
my God. Oh yeah, you have 3 kids that
I
are
got 3 kids, right? I made the
tough
decision
driving.
on all of them. I also negotiated all of them. The days of the woman being the silent partner are over. We
We
hold
all know this.
right? Oh, then
Know
we
it.
want women on the floor. So here's where automotive may struggle, is you have in your mindset a square peg for what sales looks like.
Right.
I'm gonna
And
tell
we
you
talk about
right
all
now,
this.
yeah, women are a circular peg.
Exactly. We're trying to put the round peg in the square hole.
So don't freaking try to change us.
Right. We need to change
Adjust to
the hole.
us.
Right.
And
And
women tend to be so much more transformational. I'll tell you why
we
does
are.
sales, right? Why does sales have such a bad, I don't want to say a bad reputation, but it's like, oh, don't be the car salesman, right? Don't be that person.
Proverbial.
That's right. Because they're transactional. You buy a car from me, I get money from you, and I get a percentage of that. That's a transactional.
So
Women
I
are
want to,
intuitively transformational. That's the way our brain is wired.
yeah, we are wired differently,
We
right?
are
And
wired differently. So don't try to put me in a transactional mode.
so,
Gary is very, right. He's an older guy. He's ready to retire. He is so
Mhm.
transformationally thinking. He has grandkids. He has daughter-in-laws. His sales approach completely shifted from that transactional to being much more transformational. Now there's other guys there. I wouldn't like, they approach me and I'm like, back away, back away. Because I will eat you for dinner. Like, you don't want to play with me. I am
So
a master negotiator. Back away, because I'm going to scare you and you're going to quit your job.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So we know all of this.
Yeah.
Right. Like we talk about, and this is part of the thing. Like we talk about all the different ways to make our workplaces seem more attractive
Mm-hmm.
to women, but it's not working. Right. So we continue to do these things, but what we don't do is really, and that's what I like about your book, right? Like we
Yeah.
don't really get down to the bottom of it.
You
And we
got to
don't
get
get
to the
down
nitty
to,
gritty.
we talk about culture. We know what the problem is because
Yeah.
people say it's about culture, it's about this, it's about good culture, bad culture. For me, culture cannot be created with words, right?
No,
They,
it's
they
action.
it's right, behaviors, stories.
Yeah.
Um, what's it like to work around here? I had a professor when I was in school, like he was like, look, this is the definition of ask people this. What's it like to work around here? And that's what your culture is. It's not what's up on the
It's not
wall.
what's on paper. It's not what's on your website. It's not. And if you've got 20 bullets, 8 bullets on your cultural values, you've got 5 too many.
So what you're saying is that one of the first things that an organization needs to do is, first of all, maybe ask that question.
Yeah.
What's it like to work around here?
Yeah.
Find out what your culture really is, maybe.
Oh, you know
Um,
what does that really well? The
what?
engagement survey.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right.
Huh.
Yeah, because
Right? Yeah,
you
because you
ask the
can throw
question.
in their culture questions.
Have you seen Gartner's? Gartner has like a 7 question. So the other thing about automotive to know is that our attention span is
Is
super short,
short. Well,
right?
yeah.
We need it quick and dirty. So there are, I think Gartner came up with like an index. There's 7 questions
Hmm.
ask and kind of gives you an idea of how inclusive it's specific to
Hmm.
inclusion, how inclusive your organization is.
Hmm.
Um, so you would recommend something like that, like
Oh, yeah.
start out doing
If you
something.
don't want to do a full-on engagement survey, and I look, for me, engagement, like any survey, if it has more than 20 questions, I'm not doing it.
Right.
Um, I
I
I
have a
love that.
client that did a survey without me and it had like so many questions. I was like, nobody's gonna y'all are busy.
Nobody's gonna, right. And it's so funny because I'm a member of SHRM as well, right?
Mhm.
Society of Human Resource Managers. And then they're like, we want you to take this 90-question survey. And I'm like, you're a moron. Like, there's no way. Like, if you can give it to me in under 10, I will do it. Over
Right.
10, I don't have the bandwidth.
Right. Well,
So,
so it's
yeah,
important to be thoughtful about those questions too, right?
it's
Like,
important to pick and choose which questions, right? Like anytime you do a survey, what are you solving for? What
so
do you want to know?
throw out some of the questions that you would put on so that anybody watching might get a good idea
Yeah,
of
so
what they
uh,
should put in a quick and dirty engagement survey.
I feel valued at my organization.
Yes or no? Okay.
Right? Not no, don't do yes or no. You want to use a Likert scale, a 5-point Likert scale,
Okay. So,
right? Because you don't know, right? It might be sometimes, it might be always, it might be so use that
oh, so
five
do
scale.
five
Yeah.
things.
Do
Okay.
the 5 scale, like below
Never,
average to average,
sometimes, blah, blah,
however
blah.
you want to. Yeah, I feel
Okay.
valued. My opinion matters.
Okay.
I can bring my whole self to work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's not rocket science.
Right.
My
What about
organization,
something like I feel safe, I feel comfortable or safe bringing a challenge to my supervisor?
absolutely, absolutely.
I've done these before.
Which you've done these before. You're like,
I'm
I've done these before, right?
like,
And now more so than ever, figure out how to measure your cultural humility. In other words,
ooh,
does
talk to me about that.
yeah,
Okay.
baby. Yeah, baby. Because guess what? Not everybody's white that's buying a car. I know they might find that shocking.
You're,
But
are you kidding me? Like, actually, just Black and African American community, I think I want to say buys like 30%.
right, yeah. So that cultural humility, my company values cultural differences and has provided training on understanding other differences.
And has provided training.
Oh, because cultural humility
Understanding.
doesn't just happen, my friends.
Right.
DE&I doesn't just happen. An inclusive organization doesn't just happen, right?
So
There's a
let's talk about humility
strategic
for a second.
approach. But yes, that cultural humility. Can you check your own cultural background when interfacing with somebody next to you? Or are you going to be that person that's going to have foot and mouth syndrome and ask really inappropriate questions or approach that individual not in alignment with their cultural values? In other
So,
words, I would never, like Gary knows me.
mhm.
Gary knows me, right? Gary sees me. I always get a hug from Gary. But Gary will say, he goes, this is what I love about you, Lorraine. You're touchy-feely. I can give you a hug. He goes, because 90% of the clients that come in here, I live in a very uh, undiverse area. We're basically Middle Eastern, Asians, and whites with a sprinkling of the others. And he's like, because 90%, he's like, I would never hug another woman coming in here. I'm like, well, of course you wouldn't. They're Asian, they're Middle Eastern, right? Like, yeah,
That's
it's
not
a
their culture,
it's not their culture. It's
right?
not their
It's not,
culture.
has nothing to do, cultural intelligence, I think, is super important, not just when we're interacting with customers, but
Critical.
again, I'm always thinking about the employee, right? And I know
Yeah.
a group that employs cultural intelligence in a way that I think is really beautiful, right? The area that they operate, it's Walzer Automotive Group. I have
Mhm.
permission to talk about this because I think it's really cool anyway. Um, there is a large Muslim
Mhm.
population where they operate, right? So a few of their dealerships have quite a few Muslim employees.
Nice
They,
representation,
they created a prayer place,
right?
right, for employees, right? So
Love that.
like I think sometimes, and I love how you say it, cultural humility. And can you your own
And you
check your own culture, right? Because sometimes I think there may be the idea of like, well, the way it's not a conscious thing. It's just I grew up doing things this way, that way ever that means everybody else in the whole world should do things this way or have this belief or
Mhm.
have this value. Understanding that not everybody does or is, I
Yeah.
think, might be really, really important. In fact, I think that cultural intelligence for me, I have these for essential skills of inclusive leaders, right? And I
Mhm.
believe, and I think you say it in your book too, we can talk about it. And I mean, there is a culture, but for me, if the leaders, culture starts from the top. I've worked in groups, for
Yeah.
example, where there's a overarching group culture, but every single dealership has
No,
its own culture, and that comes from the GM, right?
it really does.
It comes from the top. So I see that in action. So do you believe that as well, that leaders really need to develop
Oh my God, it's critical. It
certain
is a
skills?
critical skill today. It wasn't a critical skill in the 80s. So, right, because I get it. What we see in dealerships also is that, right, is we don't see a whole lot of diversity in age progression.
Well, I don't remember much of the 80s anyway, so
I do. I remember the 80s were my jam, right? But
I was 80s is my jam too. I was jamming so hard I don't remember so
you
much.
don't remember. I love it. But yeah, our workplace is so different. Our communities that we're serving now, they're changing on a drop of a dime. And
And the
we got to have that
communities
understanding.
the communities that we serve are also our candidate pool,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the same it's the same pool. So it's important. What you're saying is that it's important that we move from transactional, both with our customer, with all of our stakeholders,
Mm-hmm.
right?
With everything. Yeah.
With our internal and our external clients. We
Yep.
move from being transactional into being transformational, creating relationships, really understanding, finding out, do a survey, right? Like do a short survey, find out where you are,
Mm-hmm.
and then as the next step, decide where you want to go.
And then decide where you want to go. But right, but don't just limit yourself to your organization. Look at the community you're serving. You can call the town hall and they'll tell you the demographics in the 4 cities around you.
Mhm.
They'll tell you the demographics.
All right.
Imagine, right? So I think it all takes a step back to, right, when we're talking about an inclusive organization, it really does link up with that employee experience. And what is the outcome you want? How do you want the potential employee to feel when they leave the interview? Do they want to feel that they're
I think,
already part of your culture, or do you want them to feel like I'm a standalone? Like, do
well,
you want them to answer the right? I always ask this. Do you want them to answer the questions as their whole self, or do you want the best answer? And often the best answer is the whole self answer as opposed to the can answer. Like, why are you leaving your organization? Do you want me to tell you because it's a shit show? Or do you want me to be like, because there's
right.
new change? Because I
Right.
swear, and the last thing you're going to want to do is hire me and then find out after you hired me that I'm like a freaking sailor. Right? Think about that. Can I bring my whole self to an interview or not? And what we're seeing in the interviewing space is employees or potential candidates are now bringing their whole self to the
To the interview,
interview,
right?
and organizations are like, we don't want to hire
Right.
that. We don't want to hire that. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Do they have the
Well,
skills? They have the skills.
you bring up something that is, I think, is super important, right? Which in all organizations, because
Hmm.
the facts are, the numbers are, is that uh in 2025, 64% of our workforce is millennial and Gen Z.
Hmm.
So especially Gen Z is bringing their whole self, right,
Yeah, they are.
to work. And for me, not just do we need to do, I mean, we need to do something to attract young people to automotive, right? I love this industry that has given me a life.
Hmm.
I can't wait to introduce you actually a little bit to this industry, because
Yeah.
there are so many amazing people that work in automotive, right? And
Yeah.
I love this industry, right? In all sectors. It's given me an amazing life, but young people, many young people, like my own child, right? I'm like, little girl, you could go sell cars and like kill it. And she's like, she wants nothing to do with it.
She wants nothing to do with it.
right?
Yeah.
Because we have a PR problem. So, so there's, there's that, and the fact that young people are bringing themselves, right? And the one
Mhm.
thing that I've read in what they want from a workplace is inclusion, right? So
They're
we need to
demanding it.
define what the hell that is for us.
Yeah. So inclusion is an organizational culture that allows your employees to bring their whole self to work, right? I mean, it's really not, there's not a misnomer. There's not like, oh, what's the surprise secret? I want to go to work. I want my values to be recognized and appreciated. I want what I say to be heard. I want input on a lot more than just my job function,
Mhm.
right? So there's that cross collaboration. And inclusion is while I'm working, I want to have impact on those around me.
Sometimes I tell people it's easier to talk about what it isn't than
Yeah.
what it is, right? And for me, what it isn't is making people conform, because what you say is true. We are everybody has some differences, right? There's different religions,
Yeah.
there's
Everybody has differences. Yeah.
right. Is the opposite is kind of
It's the
just making
opposite.
everybody be a robot, making everybody this is conform to the norm, right?
Conform
It's
to
not
your
okay to
norm.
be
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that doesn't mean, I think sometimes, especially in automotive, because um that doesn't mean that you don't have rules of engagement, that you don't have
Oh, God,
handbooks
no.
and policies
Yes.
and a dress code and this and that. By the way,
And
people, you should be
policies and
updating your
stuff.
dress
Yeah.
code. I mean, I just got a tattoo, right? I have a tattoo now, which
Nice.
I know, I love my tattoo. It's a special tattoo. It looks
Oh,
like
I love
it's,
it.
anyway. People are, so don't have, update your handbooks and update uh, you know, your wardrobe that you allow.
Mhm.
That's another thing when we're talking about women. They give everybody the same many times in a dealership, right? If there's a uniform on the sales floor, it'll be
Mhm.
a golf shirt. Don't put me in a golf shirt.
Don't put me in a golf shirt. I look horrible in a golf shirt. It is not, I need a V-neck.
I'm not square. I don't want to
I
be square.
need, yes, right? So it may be changing that a little bit. Allow me to wear a skirt with that golf, with the top, like just tell me the basic colors and let me show up how I flip and show up.
But it's a balance, is what you're saying, of allowing people to be who they are, to be comfortable
Mhm.
enough and safe enough, um, to not be judged deficient, um,
Mhm.
or their difference, right? Or
And let me do it my way.
mm,
Right? Like
working. You
I
mean just for
understand we
work?
need to have SOPs for the way we process things. Absolutely. And in sales, look, I spent 15 years in sales. I know sales inside out and backwards, and I have been through every flippin' sales training out there. And you know what? I still like me. I am never going to be a cookie cutter salesperson. So don't expect people around you to be cookie cutter salespeople.
Especially, I mean, for me, especially, like my kid gets so much more done in a moment than I
Hmm.
do, because she is technologically savvy, right? Like she
Yeah.
finds different ways to work. And it took me a while to, even when I mean, I talk about this sometimes, like I will never forget
Hmm.
her sitting at the dining room table in middle school doing her homework with headphones.
Yeah.
This is not something that I can do, like to be actually but she's bopping, and
Hmm.
I made a decision to let her do it her way.
You
And the
have
kid got home straight A's. What could I say? So I guess, you know, managers, if they wanted, if your younger employees see something different, a better way to be more efficient and effective.
That's it. It's like manage the goals, but manage the goals, have a succinct process, but let me ad lib a little bit. Let me show you what I can do. And that I will say that has not caught on in the automotive industry. Um, and it's part of the PR problem, right?
Mm.
Oh, are you a car salesperson? And it's not just women that struggle with this, men do too, but they're much more transactionally mindseted. So they're like, well, if I do it this way, I'll get this.
I really believe, especially with Gen Z and Gen Alpha
Oh, it's
coming,
a whole
like
new ball game.
I think I think young people who identify as male have
Mhm.
much more of the divine feminine within them. Like they're
Some,
actively, right? Like more
yep.
than in the past. I mean, the gender roles,
Yeah, the
one
gender
of the,
roles are a little more, there's a lot more gray in gender roles. It's no longer
Mhm.
black and white. And I will tell you, Gen Zs, like my kids coming into when they get out of college and come into the workplace, good luck. Because this is a generation that truly speaks its mind. This is a
Mhm.
generation that when they see something, I see it in college. I've got 3 kids in college right now, and I'm like, their department heads love my 3 kids because they're constantly challenging. But with Lena had one teacher who was grading on a curve, and Lena was like, "That's bullshit." I just like everybody. This where we're at. She's at a STEM college. All 3 of them are in STEM, and she's like, "I work hard for my A,
I
and
want my
everybody else should as well." So she went to the dean of the program, and the dean changed it. They no longer have bell curving. She's like, this is my university. You bring in honor students, the best of the best. Don't fucking dumb it down now.
See, this is why. No, it's totally fine. Believe me,
Okay.
anybody that's watching has heard the word, said the
At
word.
least it was a little quieter. At least I can just like go with it. But that was it. Right. This generation. So you can expect them to come in and you're
We're
gonna
going to
spend
speak their
money on
minds.
all these sales programs, and they're gonna be like, you know
The
what?
great thing about that is who doesn't want honesty, right? Or your truth, right? I mean, um, and I mean, we could talk forever and ever,
We
right?
could,
It's
we could.
one
It's
o'clock. So there's
already.
more stuff I
Yeah.
want to say about, when you were talking about the employee experience, especially, the employee experience starts before they're your employee. So the candidate experience, when
It's
you
huge.
said, what do you want a candidate to be thinking when they leave your interview?
Yeah.
And what I want them to be thinking is, I can't wait to come back. I hope they hire me, because let me tell you the other thing. They have options. If they're coming to interview with you, they're going to 3 others,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's important that we get this stuff done. And that's why, really part of the reason why I started
I
the,
love it.
right? Because this industry is super important to me, and it'll always be around, but I think we live in a automotive, it's necessary, right? Like it'll
Mm-hmm.
always be around, and dealers do really well. And I think sometimes we're in this place of where the good is the enemy of the best, because we're doing good. Sometimes we don't have to work on what would make us best. And I believe that if we really did make some strides toward inclusion that would drive equity and diversity,
Yeah.
then we could be spectacular. Then we could be an industry where people are like, I want to go work in automotive.
I
This
want
is
to go
my
working on them. Yeah, because if you don't, here's the reality, Sandy. If automotive doesn't get with the program on inclusion, accessibility, diversity, and equity, then in my predictive analysis, looking at the industry, in 10 years, we won't need salespeople. I actually, my predictive analysis came back that in 3 years, we won't need salespeople, that the future of automotive is going in and picking out your car basically online, having it there for you, you test drive it, and you're
every
done.
dealer in the world is ready to like hang up right now. So I
I'm
want to
sorry,
talk.
but
No, I want to talk about this more. I'm cognizant of time, right? Like I want to
yeah, I
know
know we gotta go.
analysis.
Let's schedule something
Let's
else and
do
we
a
can talk
part
about
two.
this.
Let's do a
I love
part
it.
two because I want to dig deep into that analysis.
Yep.
Um, that got you there, which
Mhm.
y'all, I did not know that she did this. So
Oh yeah,
I'm excited.
I'm a
See,
data girl.
when things happen though, yeah, but that you did this for automotive, for
Yep,
retail.
I did it
Like,
for retail automotive. I did a full predictive analysis.
we're gonna have another LinkedIn Live. I don't know, just come 5 minutes late because I can't seem to start these things.
Apparently, that seems to be the
So,
trend. We'll be there early. We'll
or
start.
I
We'll
could
plan
start.
on starting at 10 of,
Yeah,
and if
I'll
we start
start
at
early
noon, we'll be
is
psyched.
what we should do. So,
Yeah,
but before we go, I
yeah.
want everybody to know how to contact you. How do we get in touch with you? Please let us know.
Sure, sure. So the easiest way to get in touch with me, you can go right to my website, drlaranstar.com. It's Lauran, Lauranstar. So just drlaranstar.com, and you can connect with me right there. You find everything. Everything is there. But you can also shoot me an email right from there if you have questions, concerns, anything. I'll answer you.
Awesome.
It's that
So
simple.
everybody, we'll put all that information in the comments in the stream, whether you are watching us live. Thank you. Those of you who have joined us and anybody who's watching on the live stream, please feel free to reach out to either of us.
Yes.
And of course, if you're, talk to me about the council, right? We'd love to have more voices. There are some surveys, like one of the things I'm getting ready to do is that survey. I want to survey the industry, right? Like
Nice.
get the inclusion index kind of the industry as a whole, in retail in particular, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So perhaps regionally, I don't know, I'm still noodling this around. I should actually look who God puts in front of me, right? The data queen. So I can just ask her, how do I do
Data
this?
queen, that's me. I love data.
All right, so now I'm going to go back over to the LinkedIn and stop streaming.
All righty.
I can find it. So have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see you
Definitely.
soon.
We'll see you soon.